My brother-in-law Tim and his wife Missy are hosting Turkey Day today. Now Missy's going to be responsible for the whole turkey spread. So I am going to take a ham, not just any ham. This glazed ham is out of this world flavorful, and that's partly because of the glaze. The glaze starts with a cup of brown sugar and the juice and zest of 3 oranges. This is a lot of orange zest. I've also got a bunch of grated garlic, a couple of tablespoons of apple cider vinegar to give it a nice bite. And then I love the flavor of grainy brown mustard. I've got about 1/4 cup. Now for even more flavor, 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon and 1/2 teaspoon of paprika and the same amount of chili powder. And then, of course, some salt and pepper, just a healthy pinch of both. And then I'll stir this around and turn the heat to medium-high. Okay, now I need to let this glaze cook. I'm gonna stir it occasionally until it's nice and thick. It'll take about 10 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna turn the heat off and check out this glaze. It's really gotten thick in the saucepan. So now I can glaze the ham for the first stage of baking. I put the spiral cut ham cut side down on a roasting rack, and I'm gonna brush half of this glaze all over the ham. Now what I like to do is kind of use my fingers to spread apart the slices here and there and just try to tuck as much glaze as I can inside the slices. And that way when the ham bakes in the oven, the slices kind of separate out on the edges. Oh, the result is a miracle. You gotta trust me on this. Now I'm gonna tint the ham with foil, but first I wanna add some water to the pan just to make sure everything stays nice and moist. Okay. Just put the foil around the edges of the pan. I'm gonna get this into the oven at 325 degrees for the first stage. So let me pick up the story from there. So I was baking the ham, and after 90 minutes time, I turned the heat up to 375 degrees, removed the foil, brushed on the other half of the glaze, baked it for 15 minutes, basted it, and put it back in for another 15 minutes. And after all that baking and glazing, this happened. It was the big ham moment as I opened the oven to reveal a gorgeous caramelized glazed ham. Oh my goodness, it's a thing of beauty. And then I just put it on a platter, ready to cover with foil and take to Missy's to be devoured by the Drummonds. Scalloped potatoes. So I'm adding some sliced Yukon Gold potatoes to a big skillet. I had some melted butter in there. Sprinkle with salt and pepper. Now there's nothing complicated about this potato recipe, but it does kind of go in stages. I'm gonna add some very thinly sliced onions, and you want them to be thin because you want the onions to have plenty of opportunity, not just to soften, but to really, really cook with the potatoes. Okay, so now I just have to stir and start cooking the potatoes and onions. I'm gonna do that for about 6 to 7 minutes before I move on to the next stage. Okay, so the onions and potatoes are starting to soften. So for the next stage of cooking, I'm gonna add some garlic. And then I'm gonna add quite a bit of heavy cream because scalloped potatoes is definitely a creamy recipe. All right, and then I just need to stir a little bit just to make sure all the potatoes and onions are all coated in the cream. So now I'm gonna put the lid on and let it cook for another 6 or 7 minutes. All right, I'm gonna turn the heat off. This has been simmering away, and look, I'm not even gonna stir it at this point because the potatoes are looking absolutely amazing. They're very, very tender, and I don't want to create kind of a mashed, mushed potato situation. So this is getting ready to go into the broiler, but first, I'm actually going to add some strips of ham. And this is totally optional. You can also do cooked bacon if you want. Scalloped potatoes and ham.
It's a classic.
I mean, music to Alex's ears right there. And then a whole bunch of sharp cheddar cheese. And by whole bunch, I mean all the sharp cheddar cheese I could find in my fridge. But that's what scalloped potatoes are all about. At least in my world, they are. Scalloped potatoes, by definition, don't actually have to have cheese, but in my world, they do. All righty, now let's get this in the broiler, under the broiler, I should say. And there's really no hard and fast time. I'm just gonna put it in there and watch it, and then I'll pull it out when the cheese is melted and bubbly. I have high hopes.
Wow.
Oh gosh, look. Ooh, that's perfect. I wanted to kind of get it past that initial melted stage and make sure that the cheese and the edges of the potatoes got a little bit of brown.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know what to say. Now, it's perfect just like it is, and the great thing about this dish is that you can pull it out 30, 45 minutes before dinner and it'll still be perfect. It's actually a little better if you let it sit before you serve. But to serve, I like to have some fun, and you can wait and do this right before or just do it straight out of the oven. Big old pile of sour cream and a whole bunch of sliced green onions. And then it's almost kind of like a baked potato, scalloped potato, casserole, whatever. But how good does that look? Pesto egg pockets, a delicious puff pastry baked square. They're great for breakfast, and you can just grab them and go to work, school, a movie, wherever you want to go, you can take these with you. So I'm starting by scrambling some eggs. I just whisked 6 eggs with salt and pepper, and I put them into a skillet with some melted butter. And I'm going to just go ahead and add some spinach and start to give it a stir. And this is a good time to whip out the pesto. I was trying to be all fancy, and I put the jarred pesto into a bowl. I should have just kept it in the jar so you really could have seen the store-bought nature of the pesto, but I'm adding quite a bit, as you can see. Okay, so basically I'm just stirring the eggs, and I'm gonna cook them until the eggs are set, and it's really not gonna take long because this skillet was nice and hot. Look at this egg mixture. Delicious.
Very green.
Very green, very wonderful. So the eggs are pretty much cooked, so this is a good time to add the cheese, and I am using Fontina. I grated it myself just to make sure it's extra creamy, but you could do pepper jack cheese. You could do like a kind of a Tex-Mex version of these eggs where, you know, you add some peppers and chilies. These eggs are pretty much done. Check them out.
Wow.
As green as a green can be, as cheesy can be. Okay, so I'm just kind of getting them into a single layer. I'll turn off the heat, and now I'm gonna build the pockets. And I'm using store-bought puff pastry, which comes frozen. I thawed it overnight, and then I cut it into rectangles. And grab approximately 1/6 of the egg mixture. Ooh, gosh, and get it right in the middle of. Ideally, if you have time, you can let this mixture cool just a little bit, but we never have time for such things, do we?
No.
And just leave a little border around the edge. And then for the ham, I've got really small little pieces of deli ham, and I'm just folding them over twice and put them right there. So check that out, Alex.
Yum.
And then I'm gonna brush an egg wash, which is just egg beaten with a little water all around the edge. I may have filled this a little bit too full.
Maybe hard to close it.
I'm not gonna say I filled it too full. I'm gonna say I was very optimistic, which is a good place to be. I'm gonna take the second puff pastry rectangle and then just put it on top, let the edges meet up. Woo! Yes, eggs are coming out the side of that, but that's okay. And then I've got a fork and I'll crimp it shut, and that should take care of that little egg issue over on the side. Puff pastry, by definition, puffs quite a bit when it bakes. So if you don't put enough filling in it, you're gonna have a whole lot of bread, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm gonna put it on a sheet pan with parchment, and now I'm gonna build 5 more just like this. I got them all built. And before they go into the oven, I'm gonna brush the rest of the egg wash. This just helps the surface of the puff pastry look really pretty and keeps it from looking too dry. All right, so Alex, check it out real quick before we go to the oven. See?
Wow, they look awesome.
All right, let's go ahead and put them in. I forgot to sprinkle on everything bagel seasoning. You should do this after you brush on the egg wash. All right, those look good. So back into the 400-degree oven, and we'll see you back here when they're ready. All right, the pesto pastry puffs are ready. Check these out, Alex, before you go.
Wow, those look so good.
They smell amazing. They smell of pesto and pure bliss. I'm gonna get them right onto a platter. Perfect little pesto pastry puffs. They look so good. You know what? I think we need to eat one. There's no way we can't cut into one of these, so you can see what they're all about. All right? You wanna come in for the magic?
Wow.
I can't speak. They smell so good. The combination of the pesto and that bagel seasoning, oh my goodness. That is truly delicious. Breakfast casseroles have always been a hit in the Drummond household, and there's nothing wrong with baking a big one in a casserole dish, but I've found more and more that I like making the small ones because you can decide when you serve them. I keep them in the freezer in a bag, and depending on how many people I need to serve, I just take them out, nuke them, and breakfast is ready. Sometimes I do a sausage version, but I'm gonna do a ham version this time. Talk about delicious. First thing I've gotta do is whisk up all these eggs. I cracked 20 eggs into the bowl. Of course, you can make as many or as few as you want to. Okay, those are all whisked. So I'll add some salt and pepper. This is a lot of eggs. The ham is pretty salty, so I won't go too heavy on the salt, but I definitely want to have plenty of black pepper in there. I like to give eggs a little bit of a chili flavor, so I've got some chili powder. It also adds just a tiny bit of heat, and I'll whisk this in. It is no secret that I'm a huge fan of freezer food. Sometimes I wonder, after all the kids are gone from the house, if I'll still make freezer food for Lad and me. Something tells me I will. I'm just programmed to do it. It is so nice always having options in the freezer. Okay, all of this ham goes in. And then just 3 more things. I've got some really finely diced onion. For a little green, I've got some diced green bell pepper. And you can have some fun with this. You can use yellow bell pepper, red, anything you've got in the produce drawer. And cheese, of course. Big pile of grated sharp cheddar. Okay, now I gotta stir all this together. The little individual casseroles are so versatile. All you have to do is just pull them out of the freezer. You can let them thaw in the fridge overnight if you want, and then the next day just microwave them for about 30 seconds. Okay, now that was easy. And And the rest of the recipe is even easier. The first step is to get the mixture into sprayed pans. Bake them at 350 for 15 minutes. When the time's up, they'll be puffy and just barely set. They'll sink a little bit after they come out, but don't worry, that's totally normal. When they're cool, they're flash frozen on a sheet pan for 45 minutes. Then they go into a bag and back into the freezer, and that's it. So I've got some butter in a skillet, and I'm just adding scrambled eggs, whipped eggs, with some salt and pepper. And then I have a bunch of chopped chives. I'm just gonna stir the eggs and cook them slowly over medium heat until they're scrambled. And just like that, the eggs are scrambled. They look glorious. I was noticing when they were scrambling just how beautiful and fluffy they look. There's something about scrambled eggs with chives that, weakness of mine, I just love them. So I'm putting them into a bowl so that they will quickly cool down. These are great little just pockets that you can bake and serve for breakfast. You can serve them for lunch with a little side salad. And then I'm gonna add some ham. I didn't want to add the ham to the skillet because I didn't want to contribute to everything being hot, 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 and the ham is already cooked. So the ham's going to kind of help cool things down so that I can add the cheese, because these are cheesy ham and egg hand pies. So I've got grated cheddar and mozzarella cheese, and then I'll just toss, and by now the eggs are kind of cool enough that it's not going to turn the cheese into a melty, stringy mess. Okay, so now I'm gonna make the pockets. So I'm using puff pastry, and I thawed out 2 sheets and then cut them into 12 squares of equal size. And I'm gonna get a spoon and get a big scoop of the egg mixture, pretty generous, because I mean, if you're gonna grab a cheesy ham and egg hand pie, you definitely wanna have the cheese, ham, and eggs inside. You don't wanna miss them. So then I have a little bit of an egg wash, just egg and water. And I'm gonna brush the rim pretty generously because this acts as sort of a glue. And when you put it on, you kind of want to stretch it just a little bit to make sure you can meet the edges of the pastry. Just meet them up, press them together, kind of force out any air bubbles that are forming in the center. Make sure it's not filled with a big air bubble. And then take a fork and press all along the edge just to crimp everything together. Okay, so that is one cute little pocket or hand pie. I'm gonna put this on the tray and do 5 more just like it. All right, I got them all assembled. I love these. So I'm brushing the egg wash all over the surface, and that's gonna help them get kind of glossy and stay pretty when they bake. Now you can actually assemble these like they are now and then freeze them just like this. Flash freeze them in the freezer for a few minutes until they're kind of hard, and then you can just store them in plastic bags and bake them from a frozen state. Now that is some really good planning if you can pull that off. Okay, so then just to give them a little bit of decoration and crunch on top, I'm gonna sprinkle on some poppy seeds, and that egg wash will just really help them stick. You can also sprinkle a little bit of grated cheese on top instead of the poppy seeds, and they'd sort of like little shards of cheese will bake right on the surface. 400 degrees, 20 minutes, and then we are gonna eat them. I'm hungry. All right, it's been 20 minutes and 13 seconds. So, I can't move, I can't speak. So let's take a look. How do they look? That pastry. I think I should just go in and report my findings. Breakfast or lunch? The answer is yes.